Are we ready? All right. Welcome to the Carlisle Regular Board Meeting, Monday, March 19, 2018 at 6 p.m. And Mr. Bassler, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Lanehart?
Here.
Mr. Dunkman?
Here.
Mr. Jewell?
Here.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to student and program recognition. Mr. Hook.
Thank you, Mrs. Lanehart, members of the board. We got our curriculum update for the second time this year, as well as our service update, but we're going to go ahead and have Karen McKinley talk about our curriculum, get you up to speed.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening, and I apologize in advance for my voice. Wanted to touch base with you on three things real quick on curriculum. One was the K23 Literacy report card benchmark. Updates with the different content areas in terms of curriculum specifications coming out of ODE. And lastly, a change in the way that the state has decided just within the last 6 weeks or so to grade some of the Ohio State tests that we're getting ready to take. So the first thing is K23 Literacy. Last August, Mr. Milner and Mr. Eastep approached me about trying to look at what we were using as an assessment tool to see if we could find something better. We determined that we were going to pilot the one that ODE provides that's free in grades 2 and 3 and see how that worked with the actual results from the fall third grade test. And excited to say that it correlated much higher than the assessment that we were using. It still is only in the 75, 76% in terms of coordinating what it measures to what actually happens on the Ohio State test. So I'm not satisfied with that. So I'm going on and looking at the other approved instruments to see if there's any others that we might be able to find that would correlate better. And so I'll keep you updated as that research continues. Curriculum updates, there's been a lot of changes, releases on the different curriculums coming out from the state of Ohio in terms of the standards. Really not many actual changes other than just clarification of words, definitions, that type of thing. There's very, very little in terms of quantity that's changed. It's mostly just clarifying and everything. So we've been meeting with the different content areas and going over those changes with those content areas so they're aware of them. They go into place next year and will be on the test the next spring. The last thing is in the English language arts world that has been rocked in this last 6 weeks. ODE announced that for the first time they will be machine scoring all of the essays that are being done this spring on the testing. They've machine scored extended response questions in content areas for years, but have always hand scored essays. I'm not sure how I feel about that at this point. That's all they told us. They didn't really give us any ideas as to what the machine will look at, what look for. We're trying to get in touch with ODE to get some a little bit more information about that, but at this late date, I don't know that we're really going to be able to do a whole lot with that. So my language arts teachers and I have done some strategizing to try to plan for that. Let's hope we pick the right strategy, but that's what they're planning on doing. Based on what I have been able to find out, they took actual student samples of writing. So a student sample of what was a 10, which is the highest you can get, what was a 7, what was a 3, what was a 1, multiples of that, and use those to help the computer build the algorithm. And what I'm thinking they're looking at is the number of words per sentence, the different types of sentences they're using. Did they use text from the different articles that they were to have read to put into that, punctuation, those types of things. Those are the things that I think of. I'm using LinkedIn as my model for thinking about, well, you know, in a LinkedIn search, there's keywords that a machine will look for. But then again, we had an article that was published in Columbus 2 weeks ago that said that pulling words from the text could be used as plagiarism. So we haven't been able to get a clarification from ODE on that yet. So at this point, we did very well in our writing last year. It wasn't where we wanted to be, but it was a nice jump. We're going to kind of stay the path. And then just continue to try to pull things from those texts and work on our sentence structures and things like that to try to boost the scores. So that was something that was very shocking. We didn't anticipate that, but you know, everybody in the state is dealing with the same thing, so we'll see where it goes. So, yes, sir.
The essays, are these ones that are done on the computer, or are they handwritten, or a combination of both?
They're done on the computer, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 And that, you know, that's a real challenge at the third grade level because they haven't been on the computer that long. And for them to compose the thoughts in a logical way and take it to their fingers and put it on the computer and then revise it and edit it, and that's a lot of cognitive energy being used on that. So yeah, they are on computer. The good news about it is, though, is we're supposed to get the results the first week of June, which has never happened before. So that's the good side of it.
That's what they say.
That's what they said, yeah. Yeah, probably the system will crash or something. I hope not, but any other questions?
So that scoring is across all grade levels then? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody that's got an essay type response, so the high school ones will be machine scored as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So, anything else? Thank you so much. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you, Karen. Get some rest. And just a quick update as well from Gail French, our food service director.
Well, we've had a real busy couple of months. We went through the audit and that went really well. I couldn't have been more pleased than I was. The one thing that was talked about from ODE is the pricing of teacher lunches, so that's something we are going to have to address in the next year or so. There's a percentage that they wanted to be at above what we're gaining from the free and reduced lunches, that they think teachers ought to be at least at that level, if not above. And they have a percentage, and so they've spelled that all out. That got put on almost everybody's audit as an assistance. So that's something we can't just not do, but that's something we'll be dealing with. March was a fun-filled month as we celebrated Dr. Seuss Day, and we made green eggs and ham for the Grigsby kids, and then we had cake, birthday cake for him that afternoon, and then it was into National Breakfast Week where we served different, a little more developed breakfast than we normally get to do because of staffing, and so we saw our participation go up for about 20% in the Alden School and at Grigsby. So that kind of excites me for the new buildings because staffing will be such that I think we'll be able to do some more of the cooking kind of things for them instead of a quick, breakfast cereal or something like that. Our budget seems to be in really good shape going into the new year. I'm really excited because I found through DOD that I'm going to be able to buy purchase my produce through a local produce company instead of through Gordon's, and they'll take my money directly out of my USDA money that they send me, and I won't have to pay a dime for it. So I'm really excited about what that will do to save money for our budget for that. So it's been a great year. I've learned a lot and I've had a great time. So if you guys have any questions. Man, I think we're doing good because we had 5 snow days. That takes a lot out of my budget. That's a lot of income that we're not getting.
We'll see what happens Wednesday.
That, I saw the numbers last month and they don't look bad. I think we're in good shape. I think we're okay. So that's always a good place to be, so.
I think everybody's doing the snow dance right now.
I think they've already started, yeah.
Faculty included.
Possibly. I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
At this time, we will move to visitors' comments. If anybody wants to come and say anything, address the board, they may do so at this time. If not, we will move to the treasurer's report. Mr. Basso.
Thank you, Mrs. Lanehart. No non-action items this month. We'll just get straight to approval, hopefully approval of our action items. First on the list is approval for the minutes for our last regularly scheduled board meeting on February the 26th.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Moore. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jewell. If there's no questions, then you may call.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
And then I get to the broken record part of my treasurer's report. Again, no surprises. The financial report was part of your packet. What's going on now is we're starting to get to the point where we're going to start doing some POs and some different things for not necessarily the building, but the construction process. Starting to get some plans done, starting to get some people here on site, starting to get some bills and POs going. So I'm learning the process as to how all that is going to be done and the new funds that we have in place and how that's reported to the state. So that part of it's going to be a very good learning process for me, but I'm only going to do it one time. That's going to be my only construction. So it's going to be real exciting, real busy, but real exciting. But to get back to our regular financials, nothing out of the ordinary. Just moving along, another month down, right on target with where I thought we were going to be. You can look at individual stuff and say this is a little higher, this one's a little low, but big picture, we're right there.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. McIntosh. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jewell. So if you don't have any questions, we'll call the roll.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
And then finally, as part of every March meeting, we go through the process of the tax budget. That tax budget is then sent to the Warren County Auditor's Office. We have a meeting in February, and then by March 31st, we have to have an approval of our amounts and rates. No changes. It's the same stuff that we've been doing, collecting taxes, with the additional this time of the construction project. So you'll notice that that's on there. And I'm sure that residents have noticed that that's on the tax bill. That's no surprise. It might have been a surprise a little bit ago, but not a surprise anymore that that's part of it. But that's what you'll be approving.
All right. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Jewell. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Dunkman. If there's no questions, you may call the roll.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you. That's my report for the month.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Mr. Polk.
Thank you, Mrs. Lanehart. Couple of non-action items, more information. Obviously, we are continually moving forward on the construction with our architects, construction managers, the state. That's on an ongoing basis. We've got meetings scheduled all the time. It's kind of, poor Bill. Every Wednesday, we pull it, but there's a lot going on, and actually it's starting to really begin to take some shape, which is neat. With that, the first of two community forums on construction will take place. This first one will be this Thursday, March 22nd, 7 p.m. Out here in the Commons. And then the second one will be April 26th, 7 o'clock. And I'm sure there'll be a difference between those two in terms of how far it's moving, because we're starting to move a little bit beyond schematic designs, which is really trying to identify places and spots and stuff. And what happens as you start to go into the design piece, then they start looking at really more specifics. Okay, so a lot of the information they've been taking is from the educational visioning process when they with the educational communities. So it's pretty amazing to watch it, because these meetings, we have our core meetings on Wednesday. There's a lot of architectural and construction people on it right then and adjusting as we move through all the little pieces. We'll also be touching bases with individual areas, science, general ed, elementary versus high school, because obviously those two sides of the facility will be a little different because of the needs that you have. So we really are moving pretty well with that. It starts getting, it's been heavy, and it will continue to be pretty heavy. One thing, if you remember when we talked back in last year, is that it would be a year in design and 2 years in construction. We are on time and on budget. Those are the two edicts that we had. We remind them often that is the key. The architects are really pushing these guys, and the biggest one to pull along is the state. They're the kind of the come on, but they got $29 million in it, so it's okay. We want to pull them, but so it's we're just pulling them along. And I think, to be honest with you, my understanding of it is more as they've got so many checks and balances at that level. So once they do it, they make sure this person understands, and this, they got a lot of people that have to okay everything. So we just keep pushing the boulder down the hill. It keeps gathering some steam. So it's going well. Bill, if you have anything, or Dan, that's to add, I think it's moving pretty quickly.
It's interesting the way everything's going. It's, they do the square footage of each room and stuff, and then they say, here's what, then you try to put it all together to where it's convenient for each other. And
they're taking everything into consideration. Okay, where's bus drop off? When's car drop off? Where? Okay, what's the flow? What's the flow into the building going to look like? We don't want to come in at 20 different places. Okay, and so
then what it looks like after hours, because everybody uses the ball fields and stuff, so got to have a convenient parking for them too.
I want the main part of the buildings to face north and south,
Yeah.
because when it's east and west, the sun makes such a big difference
Yeah.
on temperature change when you have all these windows that we're not used to having.
that's the difference. Yeah, we don't know what to do with windows.
Windows, what's that?
Because we made suggestions that I said, we don't want to turn it that way. They need to face north and south because of the efficiency
blinds.
of your heating and cooling. Okay.
And it's all about loads, HVAC loads, and all. It's fun, but it's
exciting.
they don't leave anything unturned, do they? So.
Even the playground is going to be really buildings all around. It's going to be secure. It's
Talking about the pre-K,
yeah,
kindergarten,
yeah.
preschool is actually going to be
outside.
outside, but 4 walls around it, so you can't get to it from the outside.
That's good.
So if you think about our littlest ones, that's awesome.
Right.
We saw that Ridgemont.
Yeah.
Ridgemont
It's
had
really
that.
neat. You come out of the kindergarten room right into the playground if you want to.
Right onto it. So it's like a little courtyard. It's just for the little
Yeah.
ones. Now the other ones will be out, but
Yeah.
so others can take advantage of it, but there won't be any traffic by it. So that's the other good thing. Even that's restricted to get to. So it's neat with all the and there's a lot of more safety involved in new buildings. Anytime you start buildings after about 2005, really started to change. And so we're dealing with all of those. And we're supposed to be able to handle a hurricane or F5 tornado too now. God forbid we have one of those, but
Yeah.
I know we're going to have one place we can go, I guess. So all of those pieces get rolled into it by code now, so
Towns in the building.
it's a good thing. So the town hall meetings, again, this Thursday, March 22nd, and Thursday, April 26th, 7 PM, Carlisle High School Commons. So tell your friends,
Put it on your Facebooks.
whatever, you know,
shared
it's
it.
great. I'm going to introduce the architects and the construction managers so they can see the team and take it away. Okay. The last thing before I jump into my action items is just a reminder, Friends for Carlisle Schools met, which is the same group that helped us with the bond issue pass. They're just kind of coordinating the renewal that we have on May 8th. Just a reminder, this is just renewing an existing levy that we already have, emergency levy that we passed 5 years ago, and we promised that we would not come for new operating dollars in 5 years. We believe that we can push this another 5 years. So you can get an emergency levy going 10 years, doing something, you know, and so although we can't see all of the future, I think that if we continue on the course that we're at, you know, staying fiscally conservative and, you know, not getting silly with expenditures, we'll continue to go down this path, which really is a place that we haven't been in a long time. We're going to have in 2 years, if you can look ahead, fast forward just a little bit, you know, we're going to go into some, you know, wonderful, marvelous facilities for our students and be on solid operational footing financially. So we're at a place where we really want to be. And so, again, a reminder, this renewal will not increase your taxes. It will not increase your taxes. And as a matter of fact, as houses build, as you can see, north, well, west anyway, east, southwest, I hope up soon up in the north there, that will actually reduce the amount of taxes you're paying. So we get no more. It's a dollar figure, straight dollar figure. So the more people that build and the construction that goes in, it just reduces the tax that you're already paying. So it's no increase in taxes. So vote yeah. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Just have a lot of tribe pride. I'll leave it at that. That concludes my non-action items. I will move through my action items. Wanted to make one note on the general business with the first readings of policy. Policy 4162. The template, Neola has a template they push out, and they pushed out the wrong percentage in terms of this deals with drug and alcohol testing of CDL license holders. So if you look about halfway down into that under letter A and letter I, that's a typo. It should read .02. In both of those places, it was put in as .04. It's actually .02. That's what we currently have, and if you're okay with that, leaving it that, we'll just make that change now and leave it in the reading. If not,
Yes.
okay.
Everybody's-
So with that change on policy 4162, you can have mine if you want. I got it. Okay. Under the general business, 1A, first readings with the change in 4162. I need approval for first readings on all of those policies.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dutton, second by Mr. Moore. If there's no questions, then you may call the roll.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart?
Yes,
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
thank you, motion carried.
My other action item, supplemental employment, item 2A, need approval for that volunteer.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Jewell, second by Mr. Moore. Is there any questions? If not, Mr. Bassel, you may call the roll.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart?
Yes,
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
thank you, motion carried.
And that concludes my action items.
All right, at this time, we will move to Board of Education. Do we have a legislative report, Mr. Moore?
Just some House bills and Senate bills I want to make everybody aware of. I know for the most part, we've all been brought up to speed on what the gist of most of these are, but just for public record here. House Bill 512, they're still looking for opposition to that. The Ohio school boards are still seeking if anybody else wants to go up and testify in opposition of that. That's basically the state is trying to create a governmental oversight agency that would null and void your local school board. And all of the decisions that we would normally make would be then made by the state. So that's a pretty big one there. Some others that just to make mention of that y'all can look through and read over. House Bill 166, 318, 544, and Senate Bill 216. Some of those do have mention as well of, what Mr. Hook brought up as far as school security, building expectations now based off of new security standards of the state. So I'm sure if those go into effect, we'll have to relook some of the things that we're looking at during our building process. But again, all of those are just in the works at this moment in time. They're in their individual committees, so no floor votes that I've been made aware of at this point in time.
All right, thank you.
I thought that one bill was to dissolve the state board, not the local board.
It wants to absorb, from my reading of it, it basically wants to absorb all of them into this governmental agency. Will still be in existence, but the government oversight agency would be basically a controlling authority, and our existence would be for show, is my understanding of it.
They're trying to put the Ohio Department of Education, the higher education, into a organization that's directly under the governor.
And those are all appointees.
Appointees, yeah.
They would respond to the governor.
They would
So-
not be beholden to
You
local
no longer
populace.
then have a ODE, which is typically, even with its flaws, okay, it is still
Better.
a situation where you are voting for your board members, okay? But by taking that out of there, you now have a whole Department of Education that will be ran politically by whoever's in office. You know, Kasich won't be there long, so what the next
Whoever
one
takes
is,
over.
don't know.
We all know how politicians run things. So
It's not, obviously OSBA, BASA, OASBO, every state administrative organization has come out in opposition. Like I said, even with its flaws, I would rather respond to them and work with them on becoming better at what they do. They're really the arm of the legislature in terms of enforcing legislation. That's really what they should do. But by doing that, it does rob the locals of a lot of your authority. The second thing with this is you also put that under the governor, all of the finance of schools, which is a little bit terrifying. Because if I decide that this rainy day fund is not where it wants to be, and who's to say, not that I'm skeptical, but I'm skeptical, so. But in essence, yeah, we lose ODE. It is no longer an elected body, so that's scary.
All right. The CTC met on Wednesday, March 14th, 2018 at 7 p.m. We met on Wednesday instead of Tuesday this month because we also had an OSBA meeting on Tuesday. Do we have any old business? Any new business? All right. I guess no news is good news, right? So, at this time, I would need a motion for us to go into executive session for the purpose of personnel and no action to be taken. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. McIntosh. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jewell. You may call the roll.
Mrs. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes, thank you. Motion carried. And the time is
6:31.